now. I just felt that this is the best way to do it this month. I am hopeful that next month we'll be able to meet back in person, but personally myself, I'm just trying to keep meetings as infrequent as necessary just during this time. So thank you all. Before we get started, I should say, as I do in all meetings, this is a public meeting. It is being recorded on YouTube by the town, per the town, and minutes will be taken. I hope we'll get to that. Well, it will be taken, but I'll get to that in a moment. But if you do have comments, and I hope that you will, please direct them to me, the chair, so that we can keep some semblance of normalcy, I guess you could say. And if you do have a comment and you want to speak, I guess I should know, but I know Zoom has this raise your hand function, which you can use, but you can also just go old fashioned, and I will try to call on you. But if you're not being heard, please.
I'll email it to you.
What else can I say about the operations? We did all receive the committee rules and regs, if you will, from Janice. So it's a good idea for everybody to reread those, just to know what we're, what the rules are for the committee. I would. All right, let's see here. I think how to do this. Okay. Bruce Peel was trying to join us today. I don't see him yet, but I want to give him a couple more minutes. Bruce is, as you all know, our secretary, serves as secretary. He did just have some ankle surgery or work done, I think. So he was trying to come via Zoom. So let me just make sure he's not texting me or anything. He is not. No. So if he doesn't join us here in a moment, I will be looking for another volunteer to take some notes for this meeting.
I mean, if you went on that
there's a little background conversation going on of someone's mic.
That's Janice.
That's maybe Janice.
It's Janice, yeah.
Yeah, just in general, I guess it would be helpful if everybody could mute yourselves if you're not talking or needing to if we're having a conversation, don't mute yourself. I don't mean crazy, but just in general, it's a good idea to just kind of keep yourselves muted because there is always weird background that can pop in. All right, I'm not seeing Bruce yet. So before we do that, why don't we? Because I don't think we need a minute. Yep. Yes. So
before we do that, can I piggyback on your rules and regulation comment that you made earlier? Here's Bruce.
You may. Good morning, Bruce.
So I was I'm new to the select board and to the rules and regulations, and my role as a liaison from the select board is more listening to you and less participation. So I will try to fulfill my duties according to the book. So if I'm not talking as much and intervening as much today, it's not because I'm not interested, it's quite the contrary, but it's because I want to give you all the space you need and the time to do your duty as a harbor committee. And I will gladly kind of, just be here and listen. And but I'm happy to. So I just wanted to say that it's not because I'm uninterested. It's because I've been reminded of my duties.
Thank you, Sophie. And we do appreciate having you here. It's in past meetings, it has been we've had questions of the select board or of the liaison, and so it's really, really nice to having you here. So I appreciate you coming. Bruce, good morning. Welcome. I do want to.
Good morning.
Bruce, we're just getting started. We did the usual, this is a public meeting, notes are being taken and all of that. Are you up for taking minutes today, Bruce?
I am. I got my pen and pad right here. I had trouble with the internet. That's why I'm late.
Oh, okay, no worries.
I'll say there was a lot of traffic. I guess.
Yeah, right. You're going through it. All right. Well, I want to actually, in setting the agenda, I'd like to change the agenda and take up item number 3. I just think it's more appropriate. Let's do some introductions because we do have one new member, but I think it's helpful for all of us to kind of know who everybody is. We'll do it very quickly, just a sentence or two about who we all are so we don't spend forever. I'll start. Obviously, I'm Josh Moore. I grew up in Camden, was a harbor kid, grew up on a variety of different boats down there and worked in a lot of different capacities. Moved away, did a lot of different things, and I've now come back and raised my family here, and I work over at Lyman Morse in Camden. Mark, can we go to you?
Hi, Mark Siegenthaler. I've been in Camden for about 40 years now, and also worked in various different businesses and around the harbor.
Awesome. Elliot.
Elliot Thompson. I'm a Camden resident for about 9 years, so I'm a recreational boater.
Bruce.
Yes, I'm similar to Elliot. Moved here about 6 years ago and have a boat in the harbor.
Awesome. Bob. Oh, you're muted, Bob. You're muted.
And the clicker went the wrong way on the clicker. At any rate, I've been here since 1978. I was about 5 years ago, I retired as a lawyer. And then for almost every year that I've been here, I've had either a mooring on the sort of the launching ramp side of the harbor or sort of on the late beach, Watson's house side of the harbor. I kept my rowboat at the public landing for many years and then discovered, why am I rowing past this nice dock at Steamboat Landing? And so then I've kept it there, where it's become worse for the wear, but now I fit in better. So that's me. Thanks.
Awesome. Sandy.
Good morning, Sandy Welty. I've been Camden resident for about 40 years. I've been on the harbor committee for a while. I have a boat on a mooring out by Curtis, and I have a small law firm here in town and still practicing, trying to achieve the status that Bob has successfully reached.
Richard, good morning. You're muted, Richard.
Yeah, I know I'm muted. I think you can hear me now. Anyways, I've been on the harbor committee for a while. I've lived in Camden for another about 40 years, and have too many boats.
No such thing, Richard. No such thing. All right, and Tom, welcome.
Thanks, Tom Griffin. I've been here just since the fall of 2019, and lifelong boater. Grew up in Southern Connecticut on Long Island Sound. Spent a lot of time living in Newport, Rhode Island, and sailed up here many times. And my wife and I have a small boat in the harbor. Hopefully, if we can continue to find a place to park it, then we'll be out there again this summer.
Awesome. Welcome. And Sophie.
Thank you so much. My name is Sophie. I've moved with my husband here 5 years ago. My boat is right here in my driveway because I'm a Mainer. I grew up sailing. I learned to sail in France on 420s when I was a kid. And we moved here because we wanted to sail more. And as you can all hear in my voice, I'm also not from here. I'm from France. I was born and raised in Paris with an American mother and a French father. So that's me.
Wow, that's awesome. Thank you. All right, well, great. And I did want to mention Margie Gross is our other new member. She is unable to be here today. Unfortunately, she did have someone close to her pass, so she is spending the day with the family. So, but she sends her regrets, and she will certainly be here for the February meeting. All right, well, we'll return, I guess, to the agenda order. Sorry for taking that out of turn. But first item would be, as always, we try to have an option for public input on non-agenda items. Do we have any non-agenda items from anyone? Seeing none, seeing no hands, we'll move on to the meeting minutes. So December 8th, I hope now everybody, got the meeting minutes and other materials that we sent along. I was just going to call them up here. Sometimes it's helpful to have them. I think I can share my screen. There we go. We'll do a first test of the sharing. Everybody can see my screen, I hope. Okay, good. Okay, so did everybody get a chance to review the meeting minutes? Thank you again to Elliot for pitching in and pulling these together.
Josh?
Yep.
I don't believe I got the minutes, or I didn't get that last email.
Oh, did you get the other materials that were?
No, I just checked on the way in, and I didn't get that email.
Oh, bugger. Okay. I will, let's see here. How am I going to do it? I can send that to you. Can I send that to you while we're doing this? This is gonna test my internet ability, but I will try to send those to you presently.
Yeah, don't worry, because I'm not good at doing two screens at once.
Oh, okay. All right. Did other members, and since you weren't here for that meeting, Bruce,
Right.
probably okay that you didn't get those, but I did just send you those, hopefully, by separate.
I'm looking at that email you sent, Josh, and Bruce is the first one on the list.
Am I? Or maybe I looked this morning. Maybe I looked in the wrong place.
Was Monday, the 10th at 7:12 p.m.
It didn't come through for me there's no Zoom connection. I got that, but there's no attachment. There
Yeah.
is no.
Right, that was the agenda and all the material for the meeting. I think a Zoom attachment was sent earlier.
Yeah, it was.
You have to watch it on your phone.
Well, I can forward this to you.
All right.
Again, if you're listening in, if you would just mute yourselves while you're listening. If you're not participating, that would be awesome. Just to keep background noise down. All right. Anyone else? Others hopefully did get a chance to read the minutes. Any comments or amendments or edits that you thought were necessary?
Just wanted to make sure that I remembered correctly. The pier itself had stone cribs, so when it referred to the pilings, that could only be those things that were at the end that the float was going to back into.
That is correct. Yep.
Okay.
And that was in the checklist that we submitted. The recommendations clarified that the pilings that were on the float at the end were agreed to be removed.
Good.
I move that Elliot did a magnificent job on these minutes and approve them as is.
All right, we have a motion. We have a second.
Second.
Second by Bob. Thank you, Bob. Any other discussion on the minutes? We'll have a vote. All those in favor of the minutes, passing the minutes as, all right, we got 1, 2, 3. Bruce, you weren't here, so I'm not sure. Mark, there we go. We'll take it as a 4-0. There we go. Thank you, everybody. Excellent. All right, we're moving right along, which is just what I want. So that's great. So now we get to the Fisherman's Float applications. Oh, I should mention also, that I did have a conversation moments ago with our harbor master, Steve Pixley. Unfortunately, he had a doctor's appointment scheduled for right now. So we did a quick review of a few items. So I'll try to give Steve's comments. Basically, he didn't have any comments on the harbor committee, on the fisherman's float applications, other than to say that there was one in your packet there of the 9 that is a new one. I believe it was Herb. I'm gonna torture his last name. Herb Bechelman. I'm not sure how I say the last name, honestly. Herb. Anyway, he is apparently has been working off of Steamboat Landing, and is instead applying to fish off of the public landing fisherman's float section. All of the operators, the fishermen, have been operating for a number of years from Camden, and Steve had nothing but positive things to say about them.
These applications only relate to the float up at the head of the harbor?
That is correct. That is my read of this. Yes. Yep. Any other comment? Most of these names we all know, but anybody else have a?
Yeah, I had a comment. Everything looks fine, except Adam Scott hasn't listed his boat name or boat length. And I know we've put him on hold before for not having a complete application.
Okay. I'm sure we can get that filled in. I think we did that last time. We had someone who didn't put it in. We asked them to fill in to make sure that we specify the boat. You're right, Mark.
Right.
That's a good catch.
My memory is that David Emery also sort of put question mark next to his traps, and I don't know whether some sort of range should have been filled in.
Yeah, I did notice that one. And this is on late night. Yep. I mean, he does have a fishing license, a state fishing license. He is a commercial fisherman, but it's true that he doesn't specify how many traps he will fish. All right.
I don't know if that matters. I doubt we're calculating the total here, and there's some sort of limit on the total number of traps that can be serviced from there, but I just noticed that it was, some people I think had put a range and other people had put a number.
Yeah, I think it's a relevant question, Bob, actually, because it is, we need to know that this is a commercial fisherman's permit that we're providing, so we need to know that they are fishing commercially. I don't think, like you said, I don't think there's a limit on the low or high side. We just need to know the number. We just need to know, or an estimate. So I think that's reasonable for us to ask that question before moving that along. Anything else?
I guess in light of what I said, I don't know that means we need to hold it up at all. I just think we might want to flag it so that before it's acted on. Or I've forgotten, do we actually in some way act on these, or are these recommendations?
We do actually. Last year, I had to go down to the office and just sign I think it was a document that maybe it was right on the form. Anyway, I had to sign that we had reviewed and recommended approval, because that's what the select board is looking for, is our recommendation. Do we recommend that all of these be approved? And so I think what we could do on these, if you guys thought it was acceptable, would be have Liz Lowe, the harbor clerk, just contact David Emery and ask him for that number, and she could amend his application. I think that'd be reasonable. And same with Adam Scott. Ask him for the name of his vessel and the vessel length. I think would be something she could just do over the phone. I don't think that would be a problem.
I guess
And
I'd move that we recommend approval subject to that, those two equivocations.
All right, we have a motion. Excellent. Do we have a second on that?
I'll second.
Mark seconds. Thank you, Mark. Any other discussion on the commercial fisherman's float applications? I'm psyched that we have 9. That's awesome. I think that's one more than we had last year. So any other discussion? Seeing none, let's have a vote. All those in favor with the provisos that Bob had. We got 1, 2. Elliot, are you voting on that one? And there we go. That's 5-0. Thank you very much. Wow, we're flying through the agenda today. This is wonderful. All right. So now we get to the crux of what we're here to do. And that is, we have been, just to be clear, the select board asked the harbor committee to complete an analysis of Steamboat Landing. And their directions, I think, were fairly clear, but also fairly simple. And it was, they wanted to know how it was being used now, and the condition, et cetera, sort of existing conditions. And then once we had done that and drawn that up, then they would like our suggestions for how, if any, changes might be made over their Steamboat Landing. I think we talked last week. I should have a piece of paper. Last time rather, about how to approach this. There it is. And I like the breakdown that we came up with last time, sort of looking at, and I think we would look at these in terms of existing uses, go through all of them, existing uses. Then when we're done with that, then we can sort of say, okay, now this is what's happening. How does it work, and what do we suggest? And those 5 uses or aspects that I came up with were commercial uses, the launching ramp itself, obviously the prime facility, small boats and recreational uses, the dinghy dock and storage, and parking and access. Those were the 5 aspects, criteria, review criteria, I guess you could call them, that we came up with last time. Bruce, just so you know, what the select board would like is sort of, we're going to draw this up in a report. So this is you're gonna have to do double. We'll all do double duty, keeping notes, and we'll have the minutes from the meeting, but then we'll have a separate document that's sort of our report on Steamboat Landing.
Is that after this meeting? I was wondering when they want us to.
Yeah, so they didn't give us a timeline, like a hard and fast, have it done by this. But we want it to be relatively in-depth, but not something that weighs us down for months at a time. So
okay.
I'll get it done today. I'm quite sure of that. But I was kind of hoping that we can get this done maybe between this meeting and any work we do in between this and the next meeting, and then maybe wrap it up at the February meeting. That's kind of my goal.
Okay, it's just the use in the winter is much different than the use in the summer. So
yes,
we're relying on memory.
yeah, we are. That's a good point, actually. And I will be, asking more from Steve Pixley, sort of the operations, how it's been going. He's obviously critical of that. So I was disappointed that he couldn't join us for today's discussion, and we'll certainly get him for the next one. I did get some information from him about it that I'll share. I think as we go through the uses, probably easier. So why don't we, did everybody get a chance to look at the materials that we sent along? I'm going to share my screen so we all have something to look at, just so that we know what we're talking about. I got this from Darren Martin, the planning and development director, because I asked him for sort of the boundaries of Steamboat Landing. I'll zoom in a second, but I mean, I think we all know, of course, C Street runs along, takes the turn. This is the Lyman Morse property in here. C Street then continues along and becomes Steamboat Landing there, Steamboat Landing Road rather. And then C Street actually becomes Cove Road here, and then Erie Avenue beyond. Now I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Other things to note on this plan. Let's see. This is the Lyman Morse property here. This is what we call the bean yard. We'll go over that in a minute. But this property right here, I wanted to make sure everybody knows about because some people don't. This is the town parking lot for the launch ramp on Cove Road. So that's a municipal lot there, and I think that will come up later in the discussion. So that's kind of hopefully gives us our boundaries. I apologize, I'm going to keep bouncing around because I want to.
If I could ask you while that was still up on the screen, it appeared to show the width of Steamboat Landing Road, but I couldn't read it in that format. Do you know what that is?
That's a very good question. No.
See, there's a line down near the water. Maybe it doesn't have no, it doesn't.
It doesn't have a width. That's a, this is a, I think that's one of those pins, I think it is. You know what I mean?
Granite monument or pin?
I think it's a pin.
Yeah.
I'm not positive.
Okay, I thought for a minute I thought that was a distance, but it's not.
No, I don't think so. You know, there are parking spaces along here. You've seen those. This is a turnaround area, public access vehicular turnaround that the previous owners of the property deeded, I guess that's the right term, transferred to the town as a public turnaround. No parking, you can't park there. But it's just so that if you're putting your boat in and you pull in here, you maybe unhook it, drop it down in, you know, if it's a little boat or something like that. But that's the turnaround there. And then the idea being come back up and then you can park your trailer back up in the town lot there.
Josh,
Mhm.
the tax map shows the width of the road at 49.5 feet.
Oh, boom, there you go. Thank you, Elliot. So there you go, 49.5, call it 50 feet wide for this road. I think it would be helpful to just talk briefly about the history of Steamboat Landing, and I'm hoping that others might chime in as well. I don't want this to be the Josh show. I know a little bit about Steamboat Landing just because I'm a little bit of a history geek and enjoy that stuff. Steamboat Landing was, I believe the first one was put in I think it was the 1880s, was when the first steam service came to Camden. And it was, I believe this structure here, I think this is the first one. There's been 2 incarnations of Steamboat Landing. It was the terminal, the drop-off for the ferry from Boston. It would come up from Boston, stopping in various locations, Rockland, Camden, Belfast, and then I believe all the way up to Bucksport. It was a pretty significant structure because this was the primary access to Camden at that time. Obviously, the boat came in, I believe, every day. I've been twice a day even. As I said, this is the first one. Another view of it. Thank you, Elliot, for pulling these photos together from the public library. Has these photos. There it is. this turret was just awesome. You know, and you can see it was a piling structure, had a pretty sizable deck on it. Another view of it. And they did drive vehicles, or, you know, obviously originally it was horse-drawn vehicles out there. And in the later incarnation,
Do we have the dates of those pictures? Do we?
we don't, not on them. No.
But Bob Perkins certainly remembers that, right? Oh, you weren't
Yeah,
here
Bob was
around,
there.
Bob?
Actually, my mother used to ride the Boston boat to come up and go out to North Haven in the 1930s.
Huh,
It was an overnight thing.
that's awesome. Yeah, that's what they called it, right? It was the Boston boat.
Yeah, and I think I was interested when you said that they stopped in Rockland too, because I'm amazed that there are gigantic terminals so close together, not just come to Camden and then get your cart down to Rockland or whatever.
Well, and it may have been a different line, if I remember correctly. I think that there was a different one that went to Rockland, then came. I don't think it went to Rockland and then came to Camden. I think that it came from Boston to Camden. I know it came from Boston to Camden and then to Belfast. I don't know if it stopped in Rockland.
Well, I only assumed that because it was referred to as the Boston boat, but maybe they all were Boston boats because they came from Boston.
And then this is one of my favorite pictures. This is from, I think this one was from 1950, I believe. And this is the second incarnation of the Steamboat Landing wharf. Obviously nowhere near as elegant as the original one, no turrets and things like that. I think if you read that article that Elliot linked to, Dyer wrote, I feel like it got rebuilt, I think in the 20s. I think that was when the original one it burned in the 20s, and they rebuilt it with this structure. And as you can see, it was equally significant. It did serve the purpose through the 30s, I think it was, and then obviously with the advent of the roads and all of that things, this no longer became a ferry terminal. They leased it out, according to that article. I'm completely paraphrasing Barbara Dyer's article, but they leased it out to a lobster company, I believe, and they stored lobsters here. And then it really fell into disrepair in the 40s and 50s. And it was all privately owned until the 50s, according to Elliot's article. And at that time, the town, I guess the article says that this is a little bit unclear, but it appears that the town took it. And because it was, by that point, it was so dilapidated and falling into the harbor, pieces of it were falling off and all of that, that they ended up burning it in 1959, I believe it was. And they burned it, and it burned for, according to this thing, it burned for 3 days, which is pretty wild. Yeah, so that's pretty much the history that I know. For a reference point, this in this photograph, this all here is the bean yard. Here, there's your Cove Road turn right there. That would be the town parking lot. Now is right here. And this was first it was the Holly Bean shipyard, which produced obviously produced some of the largest sailing vessels of the time in the late 19th, early 20th century. And then went through a series of owners. In this picture, what's interesting is this is obviously right after the war, after World War II. And this was a very active shipyard during World War II. They built a lot of minesweepers, submarine chasers, I think it was. Anyway, wooden vessels that came off the rails here. And so you can actually see this is sort of the remnants of that. This is where the condominiums are now, right in here. And then, of course, the Lima Morse property on the inner harbor and the point. That's the history that I know. Anybody, did I miss anything from anyone? I feel like you need to know the history of the place before we start talking about more recent stuff. Anybody? All right. So Richard, I'm hoping you can help me here because I did do some research a bit ago and I couldn't put my hands on it, unfortunately, last night. But in 2001, there was previously a launching ramp. Richard set me straight on that at the last meeting in this location, but my understanding is it was a rather more rudimentary one. And in 2001, the town had a public vote to expand and improve the launching ramp. It was a fairly big topic. A lot of discussion around town about whether or not to improve that ramp. And it did ultimately pass in 2001. And that's when they put in the existing ramp with the concrete slabs and drove the pilings, or the dolphins, I think they're called, to hold those floating docks. How did I do, Richard?
Yeah, that was fine. The previous ramp, I hesitate to call it a ramp, but the beach there was basically a fairly usable gravel beach. And yeah, you could launch boats there. It wasn't terribly convenient, but it did work.
Now I'll get into Steve's specifications, if you want to call them that, and just so we know kind of what we have, the infrastructure there currently. There are 8 seasonal floats that are attached to those pilings and to a concrete block that they're bolted to on the shore. They are the original floats that were put in back in 2001. So they're 20 years old now. They every year they spend some money to repair them. After storms, but they're seasonal, so they get pulled out and they're actually stacked in the turnaround area. I think all of them are there. They always end up taking a couple up to the Public Works Department to do some repairs there. Public Works does the maintenance of them, essentially. One of them, the one that connects to the shore, to the block, Steve said needed some pretty good work. One of the fall storms did a kind of a number on it. So he thought they spent about $200 or so to rework the bolting system there.
Do you know what the total length when they're all in the water and attached together from the cement out to the end?
I don't, and I asked Steve that question, and he didn't have it off the top of his head either. I think it's about 180 feet. I think it's just shy of 200. That is a guess, and we can obviously get that, and we will get that number. But that's what I recall. It's right around between I think it's 180. The floats are they are, what do you call it? They're encapsulated foam. I think you call them the black tubs. So they're legal under the town's no unencapsulated polystyrene foam ordinance. So that was one of the questions. He said, no, they're legal. So what else is out there? There's one public bench that is there, one of the memorial benches that was just put up a couple of years ago in honor of, I believe it was Phyllis. It is Phyllis Young, Kathy Young, former Harbor Committee member's mom. And so there's one of those public memorial benches there. There is one dinghy rack located on the north side of the ramp. And it's a dinghy rack out of the water storage for dinghies and kayaks or whatever else you might want to store in it. The main aspect of the ramp that Steve wanted to talk about is the concrete slabs themselves. They're these, I would guess they're 20 plus feet wide by, I don't know, 4 or 5 feet thick or deep slabs. And they're actually bolted together, so they form sort of a hinge system that goes down into the water. Because of the way the ramp faces south, it gets it gets abused by storms pretty actively. So that is a consistent problem for them. Steve said they're just constantly repairing those slabs. And last year was a pretty big one. Again, the highway department has helped them in the past with that, but he saw that as a significant thing that we would want to talk about, because that is the piece of that's how the boats are launched.
Do we know why they were those sort of sectional pieces tied together instead of one sort of or tar ramp?
No, I don't know, actually. Maybe because I don't know how you'd put in a tar ramp, because it goes below low water, obviously. So I'm not sure how you would do it. I don't know enough about the construction of a ramp, I guess. So Steve was thought maybe we could research and find out how other towns do it. Hello, Elliot.
Getting back to the floats, did Pixley offer a schedule for replacement of those floats? Is that something that he budgeted for?
No, he said, I asked him that specifically, and he said, they should be replaced. They are, a continual maintenance item. He is sort of just keeping them going while we figure out what is happening in the Steamboat Landing area, with Lima Morse's proposal coming along hopefully fairly soon, as well as any recommendations this committee may have on this. He said they're not imminent, they're not scheduled, for instance, to be replaced this year. He's replacing a number of docks in the inner harbor. And so he felt that he said these are, you can keep these going like this. They're, just repairing them as we go, but they're in.
Okay, very good. I see that Ron Hawkins is in attendance this morning. I wonder if Ron can share any information about the design and construction of the existing launch ramp.
I can. There was, I think it cost $20,000 to have that engineered at the time. And I saw it as being deficient because of the exposure to the easterlies. And I expressed that at the Harbor Committee meetings at the time. My father was on the Harbor Committee at the time, so I was active there then. It, in all honesty, has never worked. It has required repair almost every year. I think you would have to look through the records to verify that, but it's just, and at one point, probably at least 10 years ago, Steve got access to some concrete mooring blocks, I think, that were donated by the Coast Guard perhaps, but put those in as an effort to try to diminish the effect of the wave action on the ramp. And it doesn't seem to have been very effective, and they're quite unsightly in my opinion. I think there was, I proposed an alternative method of construction, but it didn't carry any weight because I don't have an engineering degree. So it's a form of construction that's used in Europe. I've seen it in Polynesia. Anyway, we ended up with what we have, and it's required maintenance pretty much every year. So I don't know that it was, it would be hard to deem it as a success. Richard's correct when he talks about what was there earlier. It was a beach, and we used to clean the rocks off the beach that got pushed in there every winter from easterlies. And it was just a community effort. Whoever wanted to use the launching ramp threw the rocks out of the way so they could back their boat down there. I think it was paved down possibly close to the high tide mark. We can look at what other towns do, but it's going to be difficult to find a town that has as exposed a situation as this one is. So it would be perhaps misleading to use something that you observe in another situation without taking into consideration that this one is far more exposed than most situations. Even Searsport has done a lot to protect their launching ramp by building a dock. It's a crib work dock that's stone filled. They've actually extended it probably about 10 years ago. And the pilot boat that took the docking pilots out to the ships that anchor there was kept there. So, and that was kept there year round. So it provided a fair bit of shelter for the launching ramp. So Searsport's about the only place that I can think of that's exposed, that is as exposed as Camden's is. And they've, as I say, they've built a dock out in front of it to protect it from the wave action. And it isn't, I mean, Camden Outer Harbor almost always has a surge coming in. So I usually launch my boat in Rockport because for that reason. It's just really difficult to find a day when you can launch a boat in Camden. We're talking a large boat, obviously smaller boats doesn't really matter that much, but a larger boat, if you're using a yacht transport company, they're reluctant to use Camden because of that surge. The boat gets lifted and then gets dropped on their trailer, and that's not suitable for them either. But you know, they use it, but they have to pick their days.
Cool. Thank you, Ron. That's actually really helpful. Yeah, and I can attest to the even in a small boat, I once tried to pull a little 13-foot whaler out on a day when I shouldn't have, and actually got tossed right out of the boat on that ramp. It's downright dangerous in the wrong conditions. In the right conditions, it's perfect. You know, it works perfectly well, but it has to be absolutely perfect. Hello, Bruce.
Yes, South Portland has a very exposed ramp similar to Camden. Because I've bounced all over the place trying to get in and out of there with my old powerboat. So I don't know if I can go visit for a while because I'm laid up, but I could probably make a call and find out what theirs is made of.
You know, is that a municipal facility? Do you know?
Yeah, it's the town South Portland town dock.
Okay, that's cool.
Took me and 2 or 3 other boaters who got wet up to their armpits to get my boat onto the trailer.
Yeah, it's as Ron points out, it can be convenient, but it can be pretty dicey if you're doing it in the wrong conditions. And the Rockport ramp, I've used that quite a few times, and is quite protected. I wanted to sort of start in on the uses now, unless we have more infrastructure or specifications that anybody wants to talk about. Let's talk about the different uses. And
I just don't know if we talked about the ramp fairly. If we're coming back to the ramp, I'll hold my powder, but I do want.
Yeah, we will. Yeah,
to speak up for the ramp.
Yeah, there you go. The ramp. No, we will. That's one of the aspects.
Okay.
Did you have something to say, Sandy, or no?
Just a comment that as far as resources for what you're talking about, former Harbor Committee Chair Gene McKeever would be one to speak to. He was a big champion of the reconditioning of an upgrade of the ramp throughout his tenure, and put a lot of effort and energy into getting it done.
Okay. All right, well, let's start through the uses. And the first one I wanted to talk about was the commercial uses, the current commercial uses of the ramp. I did talk to Steve a little bit about that. And from a fisherman standpoint, he said that there are, he thought there were 2 fishermen who use the ramp, fish off of Steamboat Landing. Either launching as they go each time, or keeping a boat nearby in going out to. He mentioned that Dominic, and I see Dominic is here. I'll ask you to join in a second, Dom. Dominic has used that facility for his vessel, as well as the Quicksilver, which I didn't know about. And the Quicksilver is the little, for anybody who doesn't know, the little water taxi that goes out to Islesboro. And he said that the Quicksilver does sometimes come in and take crews or individuals out to Isles via Steamboat Landing. So, Dom, do you mind, since you've joined us, just letting us know a little bit about sort of how you have used that facility in the past?
Yeah. So in the past.
If you could identify yourself, Dom, real quick.
Oh, what's that?
If you could just identify yourself real quick.
Oh, yeah. I'm Dominic Joya. My wife and I own Camden Harbor Cruises, and we have, we're one of the pesky day sailors with Lively Lady. And then last year we ran a second boat, Periwinkle, which we ran off from Steamboat Landing, which we really wanted to find a private dock or a different dock, but as people know in Camden, there's not a lot of available dock space for that. So we actually ran our second boat, Periwinkle. We did ran it from Rockport and from Steamboat Landing. So we kind of divided it up, and it's a tough dock to run off from. It really is. One, you guys have already talked about how it gets really rough there. I nicknamed the dock the Worm because any kind of swell at all, and it's all over the place. So if you're dealing with people who are not that good on their feet, that can be an issue. And the other thing is that probably I bet I was probably one of the very few that actually abided by the 10-minute rule on the dock, because there's no enforcement of it. Most of the time it was good. You did get people who would leave their boat there all day long. And most of those people, though, I did notice were from the islands, and they just came in and nothing was available in town. They had to, run to the store or whatever, and they leave a boat there all day with no one on board. And but the good thing I did really like about that dock was that everyone was really kind of happy to be there. In town it's so busy in town that there's not a lot of dock space in town and stuff. So sometimes people can be on edge, but over at Steamboat, everyone's always happy to move for you, or you move someone else's boat, or if someone's in the way, slide them back a cleat, and everyone's pretty easygoing. But I think if there could definitely be room for improvement there. Another commercial boat that ran off from there was Sue Conover. She does the Island Explorers. It's like a kids, or I don't know if it's Island Explorers or something like that, but she does a kind of like a kids camp, and they do all sorts of different adventures. The yacht club, they're there quite a bit. So it does get quite, and then obviously the boats being launched and stuff like that. You do get a lot of contractors bringing supplies out to islands, whether it's lumber or, I've seen generators loaded up. It gets quite a bit of commercial use out there. I was actually quite surprised. I hadn't used it a lot in the past. We ended up using it more than we thought we were going to. I seriously thought, especially when we bought the second boat, that maybe a couple days a week, but being a very busy tourist season, which is good, we ended up using it probably 5 days a week. And then also, I think the biggest issue we had was those darn tour buses. And that was from American Cruise Lines, which we've been working with for years. And in the past, they came into Camden and they would launch people in and we'd pick them up. But if it was too rough, they couldn't anchor in Camden, then they would bus them into Steamboat and we'd pick them up with the Lively Lady. But in end of June, they decided not to come into Camden at all anymore. And that's when they started busing people in. And that's when the issues started coming up with, the people at the condos and just, I don't know why to bring in 18 people, they needed a 75 person bus, which I talked to, but I don't know that they never could get a smaller bus, but bringing the buses in there was an issue. And finally, we actually arranged for the buses to go to Rockport, which works much better. Because I didn't like the buses down there. No one down there liked the buses down there. So that was the biggest issue. Was definitely the buses, which that is kind of another issue for the town, is that there is no place for buses to pull up to the waterfront.
There is.
Camden doesn't have that.
Not on the waterfront, but by the town green, there is a designated space for buses to unload and upload and offload, I guess, people.
Right. Yep. Up in the town.
That's the only place. And, frankly, Camden is not such a big town that when you get off the bus at the town green, you're so far away from the waterfront.
Yep.
So.
I know we have gotten, for like wedding parties at charter buses and stuff, they have gotten permission from the police or whoever to bring buses to down to the public landing, which that works okay. But yeah, I mean, as you guys talked with the docks being rough and constantly needing repairs. I mean, I constantly had a drill and a bunch of very large screws on board. And I was, every time I had 15, 20 minutes, I was doing small little repairs out there just because it was a constant battle. Refastening that rub rail along the side. And I think that if there was just a small little L on the end, you could have a boat pull up to the very end of the dock for loading and unloading, for launches or, commercial use or whatever. And I actually asked Steve if I could put a board there to try to keep the dinghies back, which didn't really work. But I did use that a bit, pulling up to the end just to pick up and drop off real quick.
How big are your boats?
The one so Lively Lady's 40 overall and Periwinkle is 38. Periwinkle is the one that primarily used it. And I could pull up to the end. I know a lot of people probably wouldn't feel comfortable doing it, but
your business on both of those that you did through Steamboat Landing, was it kind of exclusively for the cruise ship industry, both when they came to Camden and when they went to Rockland, or do you do it with other groups as well?
No, charters. So Periwinkle, which runs off from Steamboat primarily, they're all the cruise ships and just primarily charters. You couldn't do
cruise ship related, just like groups that say
just groups that charter the boat for a flat rate. You couldn't do a head boat operation off from there, from Steamboat Landing. That's just wouldn't
What's a head boat?
That's what the Lively Lady does in town, and a head boat operation wouldn't work. There's just no.
Can you explain a head boat in your?
Just, you walk up, you buy a ticket and get on board. Just like what the day sailors do. Head boat
Schedule.
operation. Yeah. Yep.
Another question, Dom, you said that you saw a lot of contractors using it. That's interesting. I hadn't seen that. Are they, when you saw them, are they boats that are coming in and just using it as a transfer thing, or are they actually like launching their boats there and going out? Is there?
No, most of it was, they'd be bringing out just supplies, building supplies, building houses.
But in a boat that was already in the water, not.
Yep, their boats are already in the water, whether they're coming from, North Haven, Vinyl Haven, Islesboro, whatever, mostly North Haven. Yeah, a lot of, just carpentry supplies, 2x4s, boards, plywood, all that stuff.
Are those sort of enlarged lobster boat type things that are loading up, or are they actual?
Yeah,
scows?
we did have a couple kind of small makeshift barges in there, and that were towed by lobster boats or whatever. Yeah, and then oh shoot, there's another commercial operation I was thinking of that was there too, but I just lost it.
No, that's great. Well, that's awesome. Thank you, Dom. I really appreciate that input. That was super helpful. I learned a lot.
It is used quite a bit.
Nice.
Yep.
All right. Well, let's. If there's no more, I think we got a pretty good overview of the commercial uses. If there's no questions, let's go on to the next one. Just keep things moving, which is the ramp itself. I do want to talk about that. Obviously, that was how this whole facility came about. Was as a launching ramp for small craft or medium-sized craft.
Josh, there is one thing. A commercial use is the launch ramp. There are commercial haulers using the launch ramp.
Yes, no, that's what. Yeah, I'm sorry. I meant. I thought I'd made that clear. Yeah, fisherman, commercial. Oh, you mean? Oh, I see what you mean. Oh, right. You mean like Yachting Solutions or Ed Hurlburt or whoever. Correct. That's a very good one. Thank you, Elliot. Yeah. So there's also the commercial launching services that will take your boat from your driveway or a yard and launch it for you and use it there. The only two that I know of that are doing that are Yachting Solutions. I know uses it fairly actively, and Ed Hurlburt up at Chaders uses it as well.
I'm not know when we talk about what we think about or whatever, but when I saw these topic headlines, I was thinking about commercial use more like that is different than non-commercial uses. And so boat haulers and launchers, or most of what I've heard Dominic talking about, people coming and going, and instead of me picking up my wife, I'm picking up someone who's paying to get on my boat. I don't think that makes a heck of a lot of difference, except that, that's why I asked about the boat length, because, it's the functionality of the vessel or maybe the launching equipment that makes a difference. I don't really care whether someone's making money on it or not. If they're not selling tickets down there, if the people who are getting on a boat down there paid for their ticket instead of whatever, does it really matter to how well the facility operates?
Yeah, I think that's a valid point. I think a commercial use is just going to, by its nature, likely put a little bit more strain on the facility because it's a regular use. It's, whether it's somebody taking passengers out or somebody launching a boat, it's, they're going to be there more often than somebody might launch once a season or twice a season, whatever it might be. Let's talk about the ramp itself then. We've gone over this a fair amount, but it is, as Ron said, it was the thing that was selected back in 2001. I guess it survived 20 years, but sort of by the skin of its teeth. Yeah, I mean, it is, I would argue that it is as rudimentary a ramp as one could reasonably install there. So, yeah, Dom, you're muted.
One more commercial company that uses it a lot is Artisan Boat Works.
Oh, right.
Yep.
For the same, but I think that's the same concept as Yachting Solutions and Ed. It's,
Right,
you know,
exactly. I just wanted to
they're
add.
launching boats for seasonal use, but that's a,
Yep.
a good one. So
if I could say what I wanted to say about the ramp, you know, I guess my expectations are different because I didn't know any history, but I think that it's way more of a half full or 3/4 or 90% full. Yes, it gets the crap kicked out of it in October, at least, maybe over the winter when the surges come in. And so it has to be dealt with, and the wooden floats get some beatings. But when I think about the amount of public use we get out of it, and in terms of launching, I mean, I guess there's different levels. I mostly use it with my 19.5-foot Mako, and I never have any problem maneuvering in there or tying up to the float or whatever. There are times when you definitely need your sea legs to go down there if it's stormy, but I think it does an amazingly good job for, I don't know what the limit is, 20, 25 feet and under. And that if you're, I would imagine, Dominic, when you're coming in with a 40-foot boat, if you want to do a turn and end up with your bow out, that can get tight on the swing room and stuff like that. But I just think that when I go down there, there's almost always people launching some sort of boat, pulling a boat, accessing, the boat that's come in, bring it in, get your passengers on board. I think it does an amazing job. And yes, it's a little bumpy, but compared to what we used to put up with at the lake, it was like the Ritz.
Yeah, no, I agree. And one of the things that I'm disappointed we don't have, and it may become a recommendation or something, is sort of data on usage of that facility, because I had the exact same feeling, Bob. Like that is a very well used facility. It is. There's a lot of people coming and going. I love to see the lasers that are getting launched there. Little boats and stuff. It's awesome. So no, it's a very active facility. I would love to have data though about, and on a commercial side, perhaps there's a way we could do it. I'm not sure how we would do it on a recreational side. So anything else on the ramp itself?
In terms of data, they hire people like the college kids to sit there about milfoil or whatever up at the lake.
That's right.
You could easily have someone like that go down there on, a certain number of days during the week and just count the number of boats that go up and down the ramp or the number of boats that go in and out of the float itself.
That's a really good point. You could do it for 2 weeks or a week in July and you get a baseline at least,
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't have to do it all summer. That's a really good idea. In terms of the steepness of the ramp, it's pretty steep. I don't know too much about ramp construction, how these things work, but as Bob has said, it works, and in good weather, it works, I think, pretty darn well. Anything else about the ramp?
So I'm curious. I don't understand. So the ramp is damaged, and it's not that old.
Well, it's 20 years old. That's pretty old for.
Yeah, it's 20 years old.
Yeah,
it's concrete.
Yeah.
So, how can we? If we're thinking about re-engineering it or rebuilding it, once in my lifetime and my granddaughter's lifetime is enough. I don't understand why we can't build real estate that is much more resilient to elements. It bothers me that every 20 years we have to rebuild something like this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does. It does get abused pretty badly. A dock or a pier would or a gangway, something that's movable would likely get the same kind of use. But yeah, it is. I think that's a factor of its location and its exposure. Most facilities that face that direction would also get beat up pretty badly. It really is. Yeah, Ron.
It's doable. It hasn't lasted 20 years, first of all. Let's make that clear. It has not lasted 20 years. It's required repair pretty much on an annual basis. Usually before it starts getting used in the spring, the town crew has to go down there and remove some of those pieces of concrete and reestablish a platform to put them on, because the gravel that's underneath has gotten disturbed or moved around, or the concrete slabs themselves have gotten moved around. And the other aspect of it is too that the steel connections between that are cast into those concrete pads have rusted out. And to some extent, they've been replaced by stainless steel connections, which made sense. Should have done that in the first place, since it's in salt water. But that wasn't done because that wasn't what was engineered. So, it's not that we can't build something that would last there, that would be basically impervious to the wave action. We can do it. We just,
Of course we can.
opted not to at the time.
I mean, some of you have already heard me on my rant. I come from Europe, and we face much more severe weather than here. And I can show you EMO, or harbor construction that are centuries old, and they're still up. So to me, it's mind-boggling that we cannot figure out, to how to build for 50, 70, 100 years. That's a good use of my taxpayers' money. It is not a good use of my taxpayers' money to have to rebuild or repair every year or every other year. It's just that's crap building.
Well, what we may have proven with this, let's call it a prototype, the first version 1 of the ramp, has lasted 20 years, but with constant maintenance. What is the utility and popularity of this ramp? So we know that something should be there. So perhaps, I'm not going to put the cart before the horse, but perhaps now that we've proven the value and importance of it to the town, to users, we would look at something more robust. And maybe we might, in addition to looking at South Portland, we might look at other models, including in Europe. Sophie, that's
yeah. And we can, the other thing I wanted to say is I think it's also really important to keep it as a public usage place, with non-commercial usage being really made available to people who boat in a harbor. I use it. I put my dinghy in the water there. I pull my dinghy out of the water there. I love the ramp. And we have to really be mindful of making sure that the public knows they can use it, and make it easy for us, the public, to use.
Well, and that actually is great, because that segues into the next item, which is small boats and residential uses. And
recreational.
I agree with you. Yep, Bob.
You said residential uses, recreational.
I'm sorry, recreational. Sorry. Yeah. Yep. Small boats and recreational uses, non-commercial uses. And because I feel the same way as Sophie, this is in its current state, that is the primary user of this ramp. That's really what it is. It's a small boat ramp. I don't know what the number is. And like I said, I love seeing the lasers and dinghies and all that kind of little kayaks going in there is spectacular. I would say that is, I don't know, I'm guessing here, but I'm guessing that is still the primary use of that facility, though we do see plenty of commercial haulers or passenger vessels. But do any of you guys have a feeling on that in terms of split? We think it's 50-50. We're guessing here. I guess that's no good to be doing that.
I think it's getting smaller and smaller in that the number of kayaks, just little boat use, that's not even, there's the small boat use, like me tying up a rowboat there so that I can go out and use, or having a smaller motorboat can pick people up. But the number of day trippers, shall we say, who are using that as their way to get into the harbor, is, over the last 5 years, I mean, you didn't see many kayaks there 20 years ago, but you see all sorts of little boats getting in and out there. And I think it's fabulous. I'm not sure that those little, I guess that's the next topic, but the dinghy storage, dry storage, I'm not sure they work very well, but it does give you an idea about kayaks. But the problem is then 6 people get a kayak, storage perch. But the bottom line is, I think that we're just going to see more and more small boat access through there.
And I think that's great. Obviously, it's proof that it's being discovered, or people are being more aware of it, and I think that's fantastic. I did want to talk a little bit about the potential conflict and see if anybody has seen it. Of if you're launching or you want to launch I just use a laser because it's a little tiny sailboat, but kayak, whatever. But there's a bigger boat that's launching, and a bigger boat's going to take a lot of time, and they have to be a little bit more careful, etc. Do we see conflicts there? Should there, should it be? Should there be a pathway that this is for kayaks, this is for larger boats? I don't know if that's really feasible. But that's one of the things I've thought of, is how those two can coexist, small boats and recreational uses, and the larger boats. Has anyone seen any kind of, when I've been there, like I have a little 20-foot boat, and I launch once a year and haul once a year. And, sometimes I have to wait, but it's usually very minor. It's always late in the year too. But do we see lines, queues up the way there? Have people seen that, where they're kind of like waiting and waiting and waiting to launch? Mark?
Dominic brought up a very interesting point and valid. It's people that use that area are cordial and polite and accommodating, and it's because it's not overused. It's comfortable for everybody to use it, and I think that's important.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely not a different feeling. I'd like to think that it's a cordial feeling at the public land as well, but it is definitely it's nice. It's really nice.
I guess my point is, we don't want to really overdevelop it, and that's that.
Well, because there are, for larger boats, I had a 28-foot sailboat for years, and I only launched that in Rockport because I just didn't think that Camden's ramp was safe for it. But also Rockport was a little bit more designed to handle that volume of a commercial nature, putting the boat in. I put it in and put the mast on and take it around back to Camden. So, there are ways of maintaining different uses. Sophie, did you have something you wanted to?
I understand we don't want to overdevelop it, but I think summer over summer, we're seeing an increased number of boats and usage and users, and people enjoy getting on the water. And for me, it's exactly the same issue as the parking issue. Right now, we're fine. In 3 years, we're not. So how can we think about the future so that everybody can still enjoy, Camden's harbor and the water? Camden is the harbor. The harbor is the town. So we really have to be not just, thinking about season 2022, which I'm really looking forward to, but 2026 as well. And how can we make sure that everybody gets a fair share of the public utilities, basically, that we build in the town? So I think it's a fair question to start thinking about how can we make sure everybody still enjoy equal access.
Yeah, and I think the sooner we can start getting data, the sooner we can start building on that data and seeing trends. I think we all have anecdotal trends that are relatively reliable about increased use there, but we could start. I'm a big believer in data, and so we have that. We can actually have something to act on. Bruce, did you have something?
Yes. Another use that we haven't mentioned is there's a lot of boats, larger than kayaks and stuff, that don't launch there, but they come in and use the dock as a place to offload and put on supplies and crews and stuff like that, and even do minor repairs and stuff, and they're avoiding the 10-minute rule, but they're always on the boat. And like Mark said, happy to move and help each other dock and stuff. So I think that's a significant use as well.
Yep, I agree. Mark, did you have something?
Yeah, I'd also like to add a use. It's launch service, pick up and drop off.
The launch, what do you mean by that?
Well, the yacht club launch, Lyman Morris launch. I mean, they drop people off there and pick people up there.
They do?
Yes.
Yeah.
I didn't. Oh,
Yeah.
cool. All right.
Well, I mean, the Lyman Morris launch will drop you anywhere you want in the harbor.
Yeah, I guess I just didn't know.
Yeah, and I think it's really a drop off. It's like if they stay like 2 minutes, that's
yeah.
So
Bob, did you have something? Yep.
Yeah, I agree with Dominic and Mark that, you know, the people who use that are so cooperative. I don't, you know, kayaks tend to be over on, if you're looking out over on the left, they get organized and they put themselves in the water and you can back yourself by them. It's not a big deal. The only people that I think sort of gum up the works are the people who come in with semi-larger sailboats and then put the mast in and then rig the whole thing at the floats, and they might be there, but that's the one time where I thought, God, you know, it's getting a little difficult to work around this situation. But I also really strongly don't want the launching ramp area to become like the Bog Bridge area that gets over officialized. I mean, in the old days, everyone knew what to do and you backed your trailers in and it was so much more efficient. And now it's become so official that when I try to launch a rowing shell there, I can't really do it. I literally can't. I have no place to put the boat while I go move my car to the official parking area. And I don't want to go into that, but the point is I don't want to see a lot of directional arrows and do's and don'ts happen down at the launching ramp, because I think that really for the foreseeable future, I don't see how it's going to really be overburdened. You know, people do figure out a way to make it work.
Mm-hmm. All right. No, I think that comparison to Bog Bridge is actually a reasonable one. I think we should probably all, if anybody hasn't checked out that situation, that's what I thought, because you've got a ramp in a parking area that is somewhat separated from it. So I thought, oh, this isn't that different. Let's talk. I want to not keep everybody here all day. So let's talk about the dinghy dock and the storage options at Steamboat. As Bob and others have pointed out, there's dinghy in-water storage along the south or west side, I guess it is, sort of the yacht club side. And that's quite active. That's quite full, I would say, at this point. I think Bob can attest to that it's well used. Those dinghies, and those dinghies all do have to have a permit. I asked Steve that one, same as the public landing. So hopefully those are all being checked periodically. And then there's the dry storage in that rack on the east side, as you look at the left side, as you look at the ramp, that's a pretty new addition for, I guess, very small dinghies. What about that? Is there any, especially Bob, you use that a lot. What are you seeing down there in terms of dinghy storage, in water or out of the water?
I don't know. The in water, it's just really difficult. And some of that has to do with the fact that boats have become, the two biggest problems for me is the really beat up sort of, I'm guessing a lot of them are work dinghies, but they don't have rub rails and stuff like that. And so they beat each other up. And then the logistical nightmare is the Avons, which for some reason, even though technically they're not any wider than a classic rowboat, but they're wide the whole length until they get to the stupid point in the bow. And those things are like a jigsaw puzzle, and trying to get them to organize so that you can actually get out to your boat is a nightmare. But I don't know what can really be done about that, because I've noticed that it's not really people, the boats that are that long or that have too much horsepower. It's just that so many people have gone to Avons with 5 to 10 horsepower engines on them, and they don't organize well.
And I think the other thing is that it's seen to your about the boats rubbing. I think that those dinghies or small boats, whatever, that get tied up there get a lot more abuse, a lot more wave action than like at the inner harbor dinghy dock, where they kind of, once you find your way through the maze and tie up, you're pretty secure. But if you're in the outer harbor, you're going to have a fair amount of wave action. Mark.
So, and I think what contributes to beating up those dinghies are the way the pilings are set up. And if we could, when it's time to replace those floats or rebuild that area, if we could redesign that in a manner of maybe a center piling in the middle of the floats, so that you've got usable dock space on both sides. That's one concept.
Yeah, that's a more modern concept for.
It's interesting that you say more modern, because that's how North Haven, at the yacht club out there, they always had down the center, and that's pretty flat other than a little bit of motorboat wave action. And they've gone completely away from that. And unless we had some sort of breakwater thing, I can't imagine how the center posts would work with, that swell that makes it sort of disconcerting to walk down the floats.
Right.
Elliot.
I use Steamboat for my dinghy, and for me, the biggest issue is overcrowding. Too many dinghies for the available space.
Is that something, Elliot, that you think has changed in the last couple of years? Like when you first, I don't know how long you've had it there, but does it seem like there's gotten to be more and more people have discovered Steamboat Landing as a dinghy dock?
I've been using Steamboat for a dinghy for about 6 years, and it's always crowded. It's always been crowded. It varies throughout the season, but it is usually crowded.
Okay. What about the on-land side of things, the rack system? Anybody seen that? It seems like it's pretty full. I haven't seen a lot of paddle boards there or kayaks, but I do see dinghies sort of on their side stuffed in there, which looks like a bit of a haul to get it in there, but it seems to work. So, and I know that Steve has also in the past year really been working on getting more kayak storage over at Lake Beach. So that might be sort of taking some of the pressure off there. We have had requests. I know there've been requests for small sailboat, again, laser type dry sailing, boats, which I think would be wonderful to get a little bit more of that going down there, where people could keep a laser 420, whatever it is, on land, launch it, go sailing, have their races or whatever it might be, and pull back. That's just.
How's the storage organized? Is it on a first come, first serve, or is it part of your permit, or how do you?
I think it's first come. I'm pretty sure it's first come, first serve.
Yeah.
I think it's very Darwinian.
Yeah.
You could even come first, but then some people come in later, and the next thing you know, you don't want to leave your boat there anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You win word of the day, Bob.
Dom, yep.
I remember the Harbor Committee before, back when I was on it, we were talking about more racks, kayak racks, or dinghy racks or whatever. I think that would help, because it is, as everyone said, way overcrowded down there. And twice actually this summer, while I was down there, people, because you got to leave a pretty long painter to even get your boat in. You're crawling on someone else's boat or whatever. But twice this summer, I've hauled, once was a rigid inflatable, which was quite heavy. At low tide, looked up, and there's a dinghy up on the beach or up on the rock. And twice this summer, we hauled someone's boat back in the water and tied it back up, because someone didn't even know, and they were coming into the dinghy dock and ran over their painter. But I think, and we talked about this also, and if there was it just have to be even just a 6-foot little L on the end of that dock that went in towards the pilings. It would create a few more dinghy spots. And I think it'd be a great spot. You could have a little sign just for loading and unloading.
Mhm.
And I think it
I
would
think-
help free up.
I think we've definitely, I think that's pretty clear. We've revealed that the dinghy dock system is a little bit of that's an existing pinch point. That's an existing, we're not talking about overuse down the road. That one I think is at capacity or whatever. I wanted to talk a little bit because this segues from the small boat. Oh, Sophie.
I have to go. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Thank you so much. I will read the notes and
Sounds great.
until next time.
See you later. Bye-bye. Parking and access, because that's sort of flows right out of the small boat, kayak, etc. topic. That's the flip side. You bring, it's great that more people are coming and using this, but they have to get there somehow, and they have to park the cars somehow, and they have to, get their boat launched somehow. So, or their vehicle stored, rather, trailer stored. So I do think that should definitely be part of our purview or whatever in terms of when we're looking at this. I think the obvious solution, if you will, is this lot here, which is pretty. It's just a dirt lot. It's not very well marked. It's there's a lot of stuff kind of stored in there at times. So I think that is something that we could use more. I don't actually, again, this gets to the inventory data point. I don't know how many people use it that use this. I know that obviously the parking spaces along here are very well used. But I don't know, there's like 3 of them. So I think that access, that's what's great about this, is that it's a public facility that's being very well used. What's bad about it is that it's narrow. There's not a lot there. You know what I mean? This is it for the public access, C Street to Steamboat Road. So I think that is something that we need to bring into our discussion. Does anybody park there? You guys of the committee?
Two things. I've sort of always viewed that the lot was for trailers. I think I don't know if it still does. I think it used to say this is for trailers, not people to just park their cars who are using the float. And once you start putting trailers in there, it really doesn't handle that many of them. Although I'm not sure how many people really use, come down, launch their boat, leave their trailer there for 6 hours or 3 hours or whatever, and then come back and pull their boat back out. So I don't know. I don't know if we opened that up to non-trailer parking, whether, that's creating a problem or not. But my sort of pet peeve is when you headed up screen sharing, you go down Steamboat Landing to the water on the right by what used to be the Weatherwax house. There are 4 or 5, maybe even 6 spots that, yes, right along there that mysteriously disappeared. And that road is right there is like almost 4 lanes wide, certainly 3 lanes wide. And I just don't know why they disappeared. So otherwise, C Street, they took away half of the parking. That was a good idea. It wasn't wide enough. So that I could see why we lost spaces there because we needed to. But really, in terms of adding spaces that are nearby, it's right along those ones along the Weatherwax house and opening up the official parking area to use for cars.
Mm-hmm. It's an interesting question about whether or not that is trailer only. I guess I hadn't really thought about that. But I guess that is I think there is a sign that says trailer parking. Maybe the assumption is trailer only parking. I don't park there, so I wouldn't know.
That's not marked for trailers only. I
It's not?
use it regularly. Trailers park at the back. And it gets filled up sometimes. This past year, it wasn't so bad as it has been in other years. It's not maintained. When it gets rainy, they get lots of potholes and ponds and puddles. And it can get filled up. But I don't think it's marked to be exclusively trailer use.
Dom.
Yeah, when we do our charters for Periwinkle, that's that parking lot up there that says, trailer parking. That's where we have people park up there. And I always took it as that's where it's not just trailer parking. And I think that the only time that it really gets clogged up is when I think it needs better signage, is when someone backs their trailer right into the middle of it. And then they're taking up like 8 spaces. And then I always get a chuckle out of it because I've never left a note, but I've seen some other people leave notes on the windshield saying, you idiot, supposed to park like this or whatever. And I think if it was just better signing that said, trailer parking back here, you could get a lot more use. It's a pretty large park. I mean, it's grown up with grass. If someone just took a weed whacker, it would really expose the size of it. But it works well for parking. It's not that far of a walk. When you tell people on the phone, the parking lot's around the corner or whatever, and then you explain, it's a 2-minute walk, if that.
Yeah.
It's right there, and it's a great parking spot.
All right.
Anyway, that's my 2 cents.
Thank you. Anything else on parking and access?
Yeah,
Oh,
Josh,
Bruce.
I support Dominic with better signage. I've used it, but I never knew if it was the official parking lot for Steamboat Landing. I thought it was on I saw the sign, trailer parking, at some point, but it's kind of small, and I was always a little nervous that I was not in the right spot.
Yep. No, I think signage in general is important. A lot of people don't know, for instance, where to bring their trailers and how to back down. A lot of people do pull in through the Lyman Morse property, which can be problematic at times, especially if Lyman Morse has stuff going on up there. So they don't know, even though there's a sign, ramp this way at the end of C Street, and then they back down Steamboat Landing Road. But I think signage is I think it can be improved.
The parking along Steamboat Landing Road is time limited, is it not? Isn't that marked?
I think it's 2 hours. I think. I'd have to check.
I think that the ones that are right next to your storage shed are more like 20 minutes.
Oh, are they? Okay.
Yeah, those are very limited.
Okay. So that's the idea, I guess, is that all those are for, getting your boat situated, whether you launched it or hauling it, just short-term parking.
Mm-hmm. Right. And use because of the launch ramp and its use by the commercial haulers and the private ones too, you need to have good access to the ramp and not have it be all congested with cars on both sides. It's of course doable, but you know how people park sometimes, and it can get a little tight.
Yep, I would agree with that. All right, well, I think we've made a lot of progress today. I feel like this is probably a good spot to call it for this meeting. I think, unless, I guess I should ask, does anyone have any other, today we've done, I think we would say, existing conditions, how this is being used. Did we miss any? Is there anything anybody wants to bring up before we sort of settle on the next course of actions? Dom.
I mentioned to the town and to Steve several times that that it is a free boat launch, which is kind of rare in this day and age. Even in Rockport, you're supposed to pay a fee, which, I mean, I'm all for. That's great, and but I'm also all for imposing a fee for certain industry, commercial uses, whether it's a yearly fee or people who use it more than others. I'm totally for that, and whether that fee goes towards, improving the, getting some money to improve the boat launch or whatever. A few commercial entities that use it quite a bit that come to mind, like maybe Artisan, myself. That wouldn't really, wouldn't affect us that much, but it could help the town. But it is a free boat launch, which is great. But I think especially for the public, launching it, but for commercial use,
I think we'll look at that when we the next time around. Next meeting when we sort of talk about proposals. I think that certainly will be one that we talk about. Tom, did you have something to share?
I just have a question. You mentioned that currently the docks extend out approximately 180 feet. Do you know how far
Yes.
they extended out when it was actually a steamboat landing?
I think it was actually quite a bit further than that. We can look. It's interesting. You can actually see on the NOAA charts, they still have the outline of the old Steamboat Landing. It's pretty wild. Look at that. If you look at that area, you can see it. And so we could even overlay that on a Google Earth photo and get that. I want to say that the old one was like 300. I think it was about 100 feet further. 350, somewhere in there. It was huge. It was a big pier. There, Mark.
I'd just like to touch quickly on Dominic's idea about fees. I think what makes it work so well right now is it is open to everybody, and when you start imposing fees, and especially on commercial people, then they tend to feel like they have more of a right to be there. And what makes it work now is that everybody's on the same playing field.
That's a good point, actually.
I agree with Mark completely.
All right. Well, let's keep those. I don't want to go too deep into that one today because I think that could be a good lengthy discussion. But I think we've got a pretty good wrap up of the existing conditions. Bruce, maybe you and I can work over the next bit, and we'll sort of drop our findings and be different than the minutes. We'll also have the minutes from the meeting.
Yeah.
But then for the next meeting, I think that we should come prepared for after reading through the existing conditions and thinking about this conversation, as I said, and I think it's important to say, if any changes, we have a facility that is working in a lot of ways really, really well. And I don't want to break that. I think it's got a really nice vibe. It's got a good user base. It's just, I'm all for it. So, but I think there's probably ways that we can make it better. And I think that to Sophie's point, I think that we're seeing definitely some use increasing. So we're going to have to deal with it. And we want to be in front of it rather than reactive to it. I would ask that when we meet again, let's think about those same 5 categories: commercial uses, the ramp itself, small boats and recreational uses, dinghy dock and storage, and parking and access. So sort of think about those 5 in terms of where we could improve. Also, I'm sad, as I've said repeatedly, that we don't have data of our own. But let's look, Bruce, let's look at that place in South Portland. We'll see if we can do a little research into that.
Right.
Their ramp structure. I'll talk to Sophie and see if she can have some ideas from European ideas. I'm willing to go as far as anybody wants with other options. But so that we're not the first ones with a ramp, that's for sure. It's one of the tighter ramps I've seen for sure. It's in a pretty congested little area, but let's see how it works elsewhere and see if we can bring those to the next meeting.
I'd like to volunteer to do the on-site research for Ron's Polynesian ramps.
Oh, I was going to take the France one. So, all right, you're on Polynesia. Yeah. So speaking of the next meeting, let's look at that. I believe that we said that we're the second Wednesday of the month is where we were going, unless needed further than that. So should we look at, I think that's February the 9th, 8 o'clock in the morning. Does that still work for everybody?
Yep.
Yep.
Good, looks good. We'll hope to meet in person there in the conference room. As I said, that's my preference. But I think it's more important that we keep everybody as healthy as can be in these crazy times. If nothing else, I think that's all we have. Elliot, yes.
Josh, I think that the town website may show Harbor Committee meetings as first Wednesdays. I noticed that recently, I believe. So we might want to update that. The roster of members, committee members, needs to be updated also.
Yep.
Yeah,
And the town website is an ever evolving in that beast.
Are Harbor Committee meeting minutes posted at the website?
I think they are supposed to be. I don't know. I don't actually know how often we submit them to the town, and they, as do all committees, and then they're responsible for actually updating them on the website. We don't update the website.
Mm-hmm.
They should be. And always, if anybody wants the minutes, if they're not on the website, always they can contact the town. It is a public record, so the town will provide it if anybody wants one. Anything else? Failing that, do we decide?
Okay.
I don't think we need a motion to close, but thank you guys for this. Was a great discussion. I hope I learned a heck of a lot. So thank you everybody for taking the time, and we'll see you in February. Thank
Great.
you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Zero. And I see you.